Hello, everyone. I'm delighted to talk to you today and would like to thank Autism Connect and Krisha for inviting me to speak. I hope you'll find my presentation interesting. After telling you how I came to write about autism, I will provide a very short introduction to my book on parenting a neurodivergent child. The rest of the talk will be based on my current book, Autistic and Unemployed: 6 Steps to Help You Find and Keep a Job. How I came to write about autism. Our son John was born 10 and a half weeks early in the mid-1970s. He was an undiagnosed twin, the other one not surviving, and weighed only 2.5 pounds. He came home after an 11-week stay in hospital. John had many issues as a child and would be diagnosed these days as autistic, ADHD, dyspraxic, and dyslexic. A statement of special educational needs was requested by his school under the 1981 Education Act, but in those days there was no requirement to provide additional support. As no one seemed to know what to do to help him, we had to deal on our own with each challenge as it arose. The results of our parenting efforts were so good, I decided to write my first book to help other parents of neurodivergent children learn from our experience. Sometime later, on learning how many autistic people were unemployed, and given our son's successful working life, I started to research and then write my second book to help autistic people find and keep a job. This book has not been published yet, but is being seriously considered by Jessica Kingsley Publishers. My first book on parenting a neurodivergent child is called Different or Disabled: A Positive Approach to Parenting a Child on the Autism Spectrum. It describes the parenting methods we used, the challenges we met, the decisions we made, the reasoning behind them, what with hindsight we could have done better. Our son's input to the book was key, explaining why he behaved as he did and how the world felt to him.
Ma'am, you can
In my
start the
talk,
screen sharing.
oh dear. Well, I'll have to come out of this. I don't know what's happened. Shall I start again?
No, you just need to start the screen sharing so the audiences can see your slides and they can better understand
Can
your
they see?
presentation.
Okay, so where do I go? Back to where I got to?
You need to go back on the Zoom.
And do I go back to the phone? Can you share? Can you see it now?
No, I can't see your screen. You need to start your screen sharing.
I thought I did. Share.
Yes.
Okay.
Presentation.
Is that working
Yes.
now?
Yeah, now I'm able to see
Okay.
that. Okay. You can
Okay. So where should I start again?
where
Or
you just
not?
left, you can just start from there.
Start from there. Okay, that's fine. Okay.
And you can just keep changing the slides for people.
Okay. Okay.
Great.
In my talk, I will describe who will find this book useful, explain the 6 steps described in the book, and provide some pointers to the very important role that parents and carers can play in helping their child find a job that suits them. Who is this book for? This book is for unemployed autistic people, whether diagnosed or not, regardless of their interests, talents, or skills, gender, location, and the type of work they want. As many of the barriers described in this book also apply to people with other neurodivergent conditions, such as those with ADHD, this book could also be of interest to them. My book could be really useful to anyone who's trying to help an autistic person find long-lasting and rewarding work, whether family or professional. Autistic people often need a considerable amount of help if they are to find satisfying careers in a world designed for non-autistic individuals. One way that the autistic job seeker can be helped is by working with them through the many checklists contained in my book. It can be very difficult for anyone to identify their major strengths and challenges on their own. The nearer the results are to a true picture, then the nearer the job seeker will be to identifying those strategies that will be most helpful to them in their search for a long-term, fulfilling career. The 6 steps listed on the slide provide a logical, step-by-step approach that can help an autistic person find a long-term job which exploits their strengths and minimizes those areas where they may need some support. It should increase their feelings of self-worth, make burnout less likely, and reduce their chances of being made redundant. Step 1, identify strengths. Why is it so important to identify strengths? Unfortunately, the formal diagnostic criteria of autism only lists deficits and ignores the undoubted strengths that accompany neurodivergent conditions. Identifying strengths can raise an autistic person's self-esteem, help them choose an appropriate job, and make it easier to self-advocate, particularly important during interviews and when asking for workplace accommodations. Every autistic person is different, but typical strengths often include excellent powers of concentration, very good long-term memory, attention to detail, good problem-solving skills, creativity and thinking outside the box, honesty and integrity, reliability, and a positive attitude to work. Many of these qualities are valued highly by employers. To help the autistic reader identify their strengths, the relevant chapter in my book contains a detailed checklist and a simple rating system. The suggested rating system is 1, this is a significant strength which is likely to be a major asset in the workplace. 2, this is a moderate strength which could be useful in the workplace. 3, this isn't a particular strength. Step 2, identify workplace barriers. It is crucial for an autistic person to understand which of their differences could cause a major problem in the workplace. Everyone is different, but the main barriers described in my book are experienced by many autistic people in a workplace designed for non-autistic people. Qualifications and work record. Their actual qualifications may not reflect the autistic person's true ability, while lack of work experience and gaps in their work record can make it harder to find an appropriate job. Social and communication barriers. The main reason for failing to be offered a job are problems with interviews. These barriers are also the main reason for losing jobs, not the actual work performance. Autistic people often have sensory sensitivities that differ markedly from those of non-autistic people, and this can be quite problematic in the workplace. Sensory sensitivities can affect reactions to noise, crowds, bright or flickering lights, touch, smell, temperature, and visual distractions. Differences in executive functioning can sometimes be a major barrier in the workplace. Executive functioning includes paying attention, that is, staying focused on a task, even if it is boring and despite internal or external distractions. Coping with change. The workplace is rarely static. For example, there could be changes in management, co-workers, computer software, work location, and even the job itself. Working or short-term memory challenges. Difficulties with organizing, planning, and sequencing can make it hard to think ahead, set goals, produce plans with a sequence of steps, and write reports in a structured way. Prioritizing challenges can lead to an inability to distinguish between important and urgent tasks and can lead to missed deadlines. Processing speed. Although not considered to be an executive function, processing speed influences the extent to which executive skills can be employed. Processing speed challenges can lead to an inability to think on one's feet, to provide an immediate response when required, to make quick choices or rapid decisions, all of which can make the workplace very challenging. Many autistic people suffer from stress and anxiety, and they can be prone to autistic fatigue and burnout. Sometimes, if untreated, anxiety can lead to clinical depression. Anxiety can make it difficult to cope with the working environment, think clearly, make decisions, concentrate, cope with the workload, and remain motivated and focused. The most common causes of workplace anxiety include transitions and constant change, dealing with social situations, sensory overload, and unreasonable workloads. The main transport barriers include an inability to drive, to use public transport alone, feeling nauseous on public transport, unreliable public transport, stress if traveling during crowded rush hours, parking worries, journeys taking too long or being too expensive. Housing barriers for autistic people include an inability to move to be nearer to suitable work, either because they couldn't afford to rent somewhere to live or may not feel able to leave their parental home and live on their own if they have never lived independently before. Fine or gross motor skills may be affected. Poor fine motor skills can affect handwriting, drawing, typing, cutting, craft work, using tools, driving, many assembly jobs, construction jobs such as welding, plastering, or bricklaying. Difficulties with gross motor skills can lead to clumsiness, dropping or spilling stuff, or walking into things. Balance may be poor, and there may be struggles with many sports. After identifying and rating an autistic individual's challenges in step 2, steps 3, 4, and 5 are then applied to each barrier in order to find ways to minimize these challenges. Step 3, consider the working environment. It is really important for the autistic person to understand and accept which situations cause them stress and anxiety, and avoid any environments which would highlight their differences and make it very hard for them to do their job well. Such jobs, should they get them, would be unlikely to last. Autistic people need jobs that capitalize on their strengths, whatever they might be. Finding an autism-friendly and supportive employer is one of the most important things an autistic person can do to increase their chances of a long and happy working life. The two most important factors that make an employer autism-friendly are a supportive line manager and the culture of the organization. A supportive line manager should, amongst other things, create a psychologically safe environment, provide any workplace accommodations that are required, should ensure the job requirements and expectations are clearly defined and communicated. They should provide a stable, consistent, predictable, and highly structured and organized environment with few changes and surprises. They should cultivate a cooperative rather than competitive workplace and ensure co-workers don't bully or tease them. They should have regular meetings with the employee and provide honest feedback. They should ensure career advancement and fair pay, be educated about autism, and have ongoing support from autism experts. An autism-friendly culture is also very important because good managers can move on. Some of the characteristics of an autism-friendly culture include board-level recognition, a designated manager for neurodiversity support, a policy to recruit a diverse workforce, a recognition of the importance of accommodations for all staff, autism awareness training for everyone, and ongoing external support from autism employment service providers, an employee resource group, the existence and enforcement of strong anti-discrimination and anti-bullying policies, and the presence of co-workers with autism or other neurodivergent diagnoses who have been promoted. Step 4, coaching and self-help. Workplace barriers can be minimized by means of training, coaching, hard work, practice, technology, a variety of self-help measures, and in some cases, medication. Some modifiable barriers are listed on the slide, but this is definitely not a suggestion that the autistic person should camouflage their autistic traits. Step 5, accommodations. If, after applying steps 3 and 4, some workplace barriers still remain, autistic employees may need to ask their employer for some workplace accommodations or adjustments. A workplace accommodation or adjustment is any change to the workplace environment or in working practices that enables a qualified autistic employee enjoy the same employment opportunities as a qualified non-autistic employee. The aim is to create a level playing field where the autistic person can overcome some of the barriers they face in the workplace so that they can play to their strengths. Examples of workplace accommodations include changes in management processes and communication methods, autism awareness training, availability of support in the form of a mentor, job coach, work buddy, or someone similar. Changes in working practices such as flexibility in working hours, working location, and timing of breaks. Changes in the physical environment to reduce sensory distractions. The use of assistive technology, the acquisition or modification of equipment. Telling your employer about your autism. I prefer the expression sharing your autism to the usual one of disclosing your autism, which sounds as if there is something shameful to hide. Telling your employer can be tricky, but it may be necessary in order to receive accommodations. My book describes the advantages and disadvantages of sharing your autism, whether you should share, what you should share, when you should share, to whom you should share, and how you should share. Choosing workplace accommodations. Even though autistic people have a great deal to offer organizations, employers can be reluctant to employ them because they don't know how to manage them. As all autistic people are different, it can be very difficult for employers to know what a particular person's workplace needs are. One can't expect a line manager to be an autism expert, and certainly not on the specific barriers a particular individual might face and the workplace accommodations that might help them. An autistic person may be able to help their manager support them if they are clear in their own mind what their major barriers are in the workplace and what accommodations they would need to minimize them. It is important for this information to be communicated to an employer in a positive way so that the employer understands how these accommodations enable the autistic employee to make the most of their strengths. What makes an accommodation reasonable? Although equality laws in several countries require employers to take steps to remove, reduce, or prevent the obstacles a disabled worker or job applicant might face where it's reasonable to do so, there is no clear definition of what reasonable means. It is unique to each organization and will depend on the nature and size of the business, as well as the kind of workplace accommodation that is required. Negotiations about workplace accommodations may well depend on how well each side argues that they are actually reasonable. It may be sensible for the autistic employee to have someone with them to help argue their case. Even if accommodations have been agreed, their successful implementation depends on having structures in place to ensure the accommodations are implemented speedily. Systems such as regular meetings between the employee and employer to monitor the effectiveness of any accommodations, as needs can change with time. Any change, such as a new job role, an alteration, responsibilities or workload, a different manager, different co-workers, or moving to a new location may introduce new barriers and require different workplace accommodations. Ideally, the accommodation should be embedded within the organization's everyday working practices so that there is no need for autistic people to continually advocate for their implementation. Step 6, job hunting. Having identified their major strengths, skills, and workplace barriers, the autistic person needs to decide whether they want to work for themselves, that is, be self-employed, or work for someone else, that is, be an employee. Supported employment, apprenticeships, and zero-hours contracts are not described in my book. Self-employment includes freelancers, independent contractors, or business owners. Autistic people have many characteristics that can make them likely to make a success of self-employment. These include the ability to focus intensely, inventive and creative minds, attention to detail, passion for and particular expertise on specific subjects, and a willingness to spend a great deal of time on them. There are many successful self-employed autistic people who focus on their particular strengths, including artists, designers, actors, musicians, software engineers, writers, editors, and proofreaders. There are many advantages to working for themselves and being their own boss, but equally there are many disadvantages. It is important for the autistic person to understand what these disadvantages are, so that they can decide whether they could cope with them or whether, despite the obvious advantages, they would find self-employment too stressful. What to do next? If the autistic person still thinks they would like to be self-employed, it is important that they get as much help and advice as possible. Carry out basic market research to find out about their competitors, how much they should charge, and whether there is an actual need for their services. It is also very important that they come up with a business plan and a cash flow forecast before starting work. Competitive employment. Research is crucial. Autistic people are capable of all sorts of careers. To find out which will be best for them, first they need to make a list of their major strengths and workplace barriers, the criteria for their ideal job, organized into must-have, like-to-have, and negotiable, and the types of jobs they don't want. Secondly, they need to rate the requirements for each occupation they research against this list. Occupational research can include looking at occupational databases, using libraries, colleges, chambers of commerce, local business directories, local websites and social media, radio, newspapers, etc., to find out about local employers. Reading trade or professional newsletters, blogs, magazines, journals and websites, talking to people and job shadowing, setting up Google News alerts on particular careers and organizations they might be interested in, contacting employers for a job. The usual way of applying for advertised jobs can be problematic, as there may be competition with many other job applicants. Unless the organization is looking specifically for autistic people, the autistic applicant is likely to be at a disadvantage. Many jobs are never advertised. This is called the hidden job market. When looking for jobs that are not advertised, it is best to use networking connections for an introduction. The job application process. Advertisements should distinguish between essential and desirable requirements, but there may be a need to contact the recruiter if this is not clear on the advert. Application forms. It is important to get someone to check these before sending them off. The CV or resume should always be tailored to the job being applied for and should always contain all the key words in the advertisement so that it will get through the applicant tracking system. A cover letter should always be included unless it is clear that it is not wanted or there is nowhere to upload it. It should focus on the applicant's strengths as an employee and how they can fulfill the key job requirements. If someone has personally referred them to the company or if they already have a link to the company, it should be mentioned. Interviews can be a major barrier for autistic people. They may need to ask for some accommodations, such as seeing the interview questions in advance, taking someone with them to the interview, carrying out a work trial rather than a formal interview, asking for direct questions based on past experience rather than hypothetical ones, and allowing them extra time to process the questions. The role of parents. Autistic teenagers and young adults can be quite vulnerable. It can be difficult for parents and carers to know how much support and advice to give and how to find a balance between helping and controlling. What can parents do? They can be realistic about their autistic child's strengths, abilities, and differences. They can collaborate with any professionals that are trying to support their child. They can provide support, encouragement, and advocacy whenever it is needed. They can provide as much practical help and admin support as their child needs, such as filling in and reviewing application forms, writing and reviewing CVs and cover letters, locating possible jobs, making phone calls, practicing interviews, applying for benefits, or anything else their child struggles with. They can work through my book with their child. They can help their child with any soft skills they find difficult. For example, parents can help their child communicate without losing their temper. They can allow their child the time to pursue their focus, interests, and passions and help them to develop these into something that an employer would find useful. Becoming an expert in something can improve their child's self-esteem, increase their employability, and may help them to make friends with those who have similar interests. Parents can help their child to find friends with similar interests, both online and offline, and encourage them to join any organizations or clubs, again, online or offline, relating to their interests. Networking is really important as this may lead to job opportunities in the future. Parents should try and use their own networks to provide their child with relevant work experience, and they should provide transport support as needed. Thank you for listening.